And we're live on YouTube as well.
Nice. All right. Hello, Effect enjoyers.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to another Effect Office Hours.
Another.
Office Hours number 33, allegedly.
Whoa. And many more counting.
Many more. Unfortunately, you'll all be missing my beautiful face on Office Hours for the next 2 weeks, actually.
Oh.
I'll be traveling to Italy.
Oh.
For a wedding.
That's nice to hear. So let's see.
Let's see what you all are saying.
Yeah. It's again that time of the week. Yes.
It is indeed, again, that time of the week. We don't have anything planned for this week, so if there are folks who have things that they want us to look at, or if there are people who have questions or whatever, let us know. Let me just see if there's anything interesting. I know that there was an individual who pinged me about a PR to look at, which was about getting like the making sure that Effect works well in temporal workflows. But I know that Mike was already looking at that PR, so I kind of left it to him. Let's see if there's anything in the small repo we can.
Happy Wedding Effect Day. Yes. Happy Wedding Effect Day at everyone.
Wedding Effect Day.
Wedding Effect Day, yes.
It is indeed Wednesday Effect Day.
It's not easy to pronounce, you know.
What is the phonetic pronunciation? Let's see if there's any interesting PRs or anything like that we could take a look at.
Let's see.
Really? Nobody has anything that they want us to look at? Nobody? Nobody?
No way. I don't believe that. I am sure that someone is keeping its effect snippets all for himself without sharing and asking. I know.
That's right.
So let's see.
How to convince my small team to adopt Effect. Perfect time for that 24-hour.
Perfect time, yeah.
When I get back from my trip, we have a couple of different office hours to schedule. One of which is I want to change the time of one of the office hours to the evening, my time, so that we can have Tim on and talk about cluster and workflow, so that I can put this to rest with all of you in the chat.
Yeah,
that is true.
You know,
we could, so Igor did offer to join us. I don't know, like, if we can dynamically invite people, but let me actually pull up.
Let's try. Yeah.
Let me pull up this tweet because I don't know how many folks know about this, but Igor has done some very, very interesting work. Let me share my screen. How do I share my screen share? Is this working? I think it is.
Just a couple of seconds, I think.
So the folks at Rivet Where is it? Here we go. The folks at Rivet have actually built like a proper effect SDK for Rivet Actors, which is pretty cool. And specifically, Igor Gassman. Please let me know if I'm pronouncing your last name incorrectly. But Igor did a ton of work on this. And I'd like to have Igor on. I'd like to have Igor on at a time when Mike is here, because I know Mike would have a lot of really good questions, because Mike is Mike and Tim are probably the most experienced in terms of like durable workflows and whatnot on the team. So I know there would be like a lot of really interesting questions, but yeah, this is a really, really cool integration, mostly because of the way that like effect primitives map onto like Rivet primitives. So if you folks are curious, I'll drop this article. There's an article in here, right? I thought there was a blog. Or is it just a...
And if I recall correctly, last time we had a quick sneak into the PR, right?
For yes, Rivet. we actually looked at this PR.
So this is kind of the follow-up we invite you to look into.
Here we go. I'll put it in here, and I will put it in here, and I will put it in Discord. But anyway, it's a pretty cool like integration with effect. So we looked at the PR last time and we gave some feedback. But it's really interesting to look at like how these primitives map onto effect primitives, and like it's really interesting. And Igor put a ton of work into this. So anyway, I think that we would like to have Igor and Nathan, if Nathan's available, on office hours one of these times. But hopefully we could do it when Mike is available, because I think it would be more interesting and engaging, and there would be better questions asked if Mike was around. Not that I don't have faith in Mattia and I to ask good questions, but it'd just be like, I think, more engaging.
Yeah.
But I think there were a bunch of questions that came in.
There was one: how to convince my small team on adopting effect. And I would say that I think that we already covered this in previous streams, but basically what I would say is that it really depends also a lot on the kind of application that you are building, because based on the kind of application you are building, you are more like sensible to which are the things that bring more value for you from effect. But effect has, in my opinion, like a wide variety of things that can improve your application, starting from the built-in interruption, the built-in telemetry, the typed error handling. I would say that first you need to maybe find out what is not going well in your running application, and then see which are the things of effect that could like improve that. And I usually think that that's one way to try to sell effect, by saying, hey, if we use the fact, this problem we have could be solved. We could enable telemetry and we could get that more observed and more control. We could do that, and you can basically push on what are the things that you are currently lacking on. Because I could say a lot about what's great about effect, but maybe 90% of what I would say would not fit for your use cases. At least that's my way to think about how to sell effect. You need to first understand which are the issues that you are hitting and how effect solve them. And usually there is a very good effect solution for those, but you need first to understand which are, I would say, the higher problems you have. Not sure if you have something to add, Max.
No, I think that was a great summary. I agree with Mattia. I feel like usually the easiest way to sell an engineer on a technology is to solve a problem for them that they've been having for a while.
Yeah.
So like if you find the problem spot in your application and you can use effect to solve that problem, I think it's kind of much easier to sell effect in that case. It's way harder to sell effect when you're just like, hey, this is cool, we should use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think like if your team has a concrete issue that's always been pestering them, like, and you can solve it in like a really interesting way with effect or something like that, and because effect is adoptable incrementally, like you can just plug it into that piece of your app and then let it grow from there. I think that's always going to be the easiest way. For greenfield projects, obviously it's like a different story, but I do feel like it is maybe for a team that's not already sold on effect, it can maybe be a little bit harder to convince people that effect is the right thing to use in a greenfield space, especially like because not only are you like developing the app, but then you have to like teach the whole team about effect. So yeah, I agree with Mattia 100%. Find a problem, solve it. It's the easiest way to sell engineers on a particular technology. It's how I would sell myself on a particular technology if I wanted myself to use it. So
I like to think it as basically sell effect as a disease, because you start adopting it in one place of your application, and then you eventually realize that it may work for the rest of your application. So finding a problem, attempting to solve only that slice with effect, and then see if that applies to all of your application.
There was something else I was going to say in this vein as well. So yeah, solving a problem is one way, and the other way is you can show other people on your team how other teams have solved problems with effect, because I think effect is now, I won't say it's mainstream because it's not, but it's like it's out there enough now that there are people using it and showing off how they solved problems. You know, like all over Twitter in our like little tech bubble, you're always going to find the effect advocates who are kind of showing the interesting stuff they're building with effect. Dillon's a really good example. Reese, Matt Pocock, Theo's team, so Julius and them are also really good examples. There's a ton of people. I'm sorry if I didn't mention your name if you're building with effect, but there's lots of like, I'll call them like prominent figures in the tech community that have tried effect and had good things to say, and so that's another way you could sell effect to the team.
I think that we are closer to 20 million npm installs or something like that, right? So
gotta love those AI agents.
Yeah, I got all of those AI agents, indeed.
Oh, the open code is another really good example of like a success story for a team that adopted effect. Most of those people, including Dax, were exceptionally skeptical on effect. Like, I think there's a tweet from Dax basically saying like, I see the value in effect, but I'll never use it.
Yeah.
And then he's giving a talk at our meetup in Miami like a few weeks ago. So I think, like I said, it all comes down to solving problems. So like if you can solve a problem, that's probably the easiest way to sell effect.
Yeah. It comes all down to the thing that effect solves complex problem, and in order to understand the value of effect, you need first to have a complex problem. And that's why usually people just look at that and say, that's maybe an overcomplication, until you actually hit the problem, and then you realize maybe.
Isn't it because they hired Kit? Well, I think one of the reasons they hired Kit was so that he could help teach the team about effect and like show how to use it and like help them onboard effect. I don't want to speak for the open code team because I don't know this, but my suspicion is that they had already made a decision to adopt the technology, or had problems that they thought effect might solve. And Kit's a great developer, so they hired him, and then they were like, hey, can you tell us if effect can solve these things? I don't know what the internal politics were about using effect in open code. but yeah, so I don't want to like harp on it too much, but it all comes down to solving problems. If you can find a difficult problem in your project that effect solves for your team, it's much easier to sell effect. Oh, hey, Dillon. Thank you for the raid. Welcome, Dillon Raiders,
Dillon.
and any effect enjoyers that are in the raiding party. Hello. All my effect enjoyers out there. Yeah, we were just answering a question about how to successfully sell your team on using Effect. I feel like we should have Dillon on the office hours one time and just have him talk about how he sold Effect first to Vercel, then to Cloudflare. Didn't know we have Twitch. Well, I have Twitch, and I stream our office hours to my Twitch. So, anyway, there are a few other questions we had here that we can. I'll come on right now if you want. Sure. If you don't have to get to work.
Yeah.
How can I invite somebody? Let me copy this link.
Yeah.
Dillon, I'm gonna send this to you in Discord, I guess, or maybe Slack. Are you in Slack? Maybe I'll send it to you in Discord.
Yeah.
Dillon.
Discord is fine. Yeah.
Let me know if that link works. While we're waiting for Dillon to join, how is the Effect team feeling about the maturity of the V4 beta? Is an RC on the horizon? It's funny, after it updates all. Yeah, okay, no problem. It's funny you mentioned this, Lloyd, because I pinged the team 3 weeks ago. I don't even know how long ago. And I was like, hey, V4 is feeling pretty good. Who's thinking about a release candidate? And I got crickets. So I think there's still a lot of the core of V4, I think, is pretty stable. I think we could get to an RC pretty soon. And I think the unstable packages, just by virtue of the fact that they're unstable, are going to have churn a little bit. But I think we're getting to a pretty good place. There are a few things that we want to get in, I think. Like there's something that Mike is working on right now related to scheduling of fibers in V4 that we need to get in. But I think we're pretty close to getting to out of beta and into like the release candidate stage. I just need to get the team to talk to me about it. So I'll how about this? I'll ping the whole team again and be like, hey guys, remember when I asked about the RC? I'm looking at you, Mattia.
I just remember that I had 2 PRs to open, and then I found a couple of things to fix.
So
Lux was
the man
here.
himself.
Hello.
Welcome.
I made it.
Welcome.
Look at all that Cloudflare swag.
I totally won. This is planet scale.
I know. I'm talking about this. It's just like, I feel like I haven't chatted with you since you joined. How are things going?
It has been a hot minute. Things are going well. We can use Alchemy V2 to write Effect on Cloudflare very easily now, and that makes me happy. And I got out of doing all the work to do it. So thank you, Sam and Alchemy team.
It's funny you mentioned that. Nice. I have a project I'm working on for my wife where I'm actually testing out like Alchemy V2 on Cloudflare with Effect V4, and the experience has been pretty nice so far. So
yeah, it's very good. I like it. I've been converting all my personal stuff to it.
Yeah. The question we got was that we wanted you to get your take on was, where are we? How it was from an individual in our YouTube who asked, how can I convince my small team on adopting Effect? And I'll bias you slightly with Mattia and I's take, and then you can sort of give your own color to this. But the gist of Mattia and I's opinion is that if you have a problem that you can solve with Effect, it's much easier to sell your team on using Effect than if you just tell them this is a cool technology that we should use. And our opinion is like, it's much easier to sell a technology to a engineer or group of engineers if you're solving problems with it, or if it solves a problem, than just because it like looks cool and shiny.
That I would add to that also come with like a prototype or a working example of it solving the problem, because that makes it even harder to say no to once it's working, and it's just easier to see the benefits, especially if you wire up things like OTel and all that stuff. I feel like my view on this has changed quite a bit from when I originally introduced Effect at at Vercel. That was a lot. I think a year ago was a lot harder of a sell than it is today. At least for companies that have leaned into AI and agentic programming. I think a lot of the things that people turn their nose up at to Effect just like matter far less, and developers are far less likely to bike shed nowadays because of AI. And it turns out that AI likes good type systems and explicitness, and Effect has that, which ironically was a thing people disliked about it or were hesitant to adopt it for. So it turned out it's like what was one of its, I don't want to call it a weakness because I still considered it a plus, but something it was criticized heavily for ended up being one of its biggest strengths, I think, today. You see people like Matt Pocock talking about that all the time, and that mirrors my experience. Everyone that uses Effect with AI like has the experience that it is much easier to get good outcomes faster and with less hand-holding. Not that it's perfect. Like this morning, like I was trying to use Effect CLI, and like it was just, I was on GPT 5.5 and on high, and like it just kept over abstracting the world and writing super defensive helper functions. Is like, bro, just be normal. It's like that car meme where it's a kid in the back screaming.
No
and the mom's like,
one-liner
"Why can't you
functions.
just be normal?" That being said, in today's world, I think you can point at, I think a good example or a good argument to be made is like even like looking at open code. Like Dax went from somebody that was super, not maybe not super skeptical as some people, but Dax always took the stance of like, I think I'd like Effect, but I don't really have a place to use it. To now, like the entire V2 rewrite of open code is like Effect top to bottom, and that entire team is Effect pilled now. And I think if you can like point to real world projects and real world code bases where this is working successfully, that works well. Yeah, I've talked a lot about like it was really challenging to sell at Vercel, but we made it work. Mostly because like we had trust and autonomy to make those decisions. I think if Vercel didn't operate that way, it would have never happened. And then at Cloudflare, I think people, by the time like I got to Cloudflare and kind of started talking about Effect, like I think there was quite a handful of people that were already like Effect pilled or understood the value add, especially with AI. So that was way less of a fight to like, I feel totally fine introducing Effect on any project, and I don't think there'd be very much, if any, pushback anywhere. Yeah, I think I'd agree. Is just like build something real that adds value. Like maybe that's just like agent tooling in a CLI, or you have a problematic service or even like a endpoint that causes, actually, this is a really good way, is like the next time you have an incident, or if you have a section of code that's always erroring or causing incidents, like refactor that one code path to Effect and lean in on like the error handling and open telemetry. And I think you'll see pretty good results. And like, it's such an inexpensive experiment nowadays to try that, because you could just have a clanker go and rip it right back out if it doesn't work well. I think that would be my take.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting that you mentioned the AI angle, because I kind of agree with you. It's like so cheap to try out new things now. Like cheap from like the perspective of time and like engineering effort. Like you can just, especially like you know, the dumb strategy that we've always mentioned to people about having a copy of effect sitting in your project, like if you give your agent a reference to that, I feel like that piece is like critical to make it work well with AI. Like I still feel like there's not enough in the training data to make it work really well with effect unless you have a copy of the code base. That's actually why I really like OpenCode's new feature of like, I think they called it like references or something like that, but you can like give in your OpenCode config paths and also like projects on GitHub and stuff that it will clone for you, not into your project, but like somewhere else. But it'll give the agent access to that information, which is great for, and it's not, doesn't just work with effect, like it can work with any open source library, but for something like effect where there's
yeah I do this with, even when I'm working not in effect, like what would be a good example, on artifacts. I work on artifacts at Cloudflare, which is like our Git version storage backed by Git product, and I have a copy of Git Oxide and libgit2 sitting in my repo for reference on when we need to add or change the Git implementation, which we wrote in Zig. It has reference, it has all the tests, it has the semantics like right there.
Yeah. And like somebody in YouTube also asked about like what's the best way to learn effect. So and they were recommended to join the Discord, which I do agree with. But I think now in the age of like, you know, agentic coding, not like when I'm learning a new technology, like the first thing I do is I clone it down and I just point my agent at it and ask questions. Because like I'll look at the docs too, because like I personally, as like a human, I still enjoy reading documentation just so I can understand what I'm using. But like if I want to get a quick prototype up and running to test whether or not something's viable and I want to learn a little bit about it on the way, I don't know. I feel like it's an underutilized way to use agents. Like just use it as a what do you call it? Like a teacher, an oracle.
You should try Matt Pocock's Teach skill. It's really, really good.
Really?
I bet it would teach effect really, really, really well.
Interesting. Somebody's gotta try it who doesn't know effect and let us know if it works well. Because I could try it, but I don't know if it like, it would be interesting to see like how it approached the problem space of like effect and like where would it start and everything like that. It'd be really interesting actually. So maybe I will try it. But like, go ahead, Matthias. Sorry.
It is also like very, very like I for example, I was always one kind of a person that loved learning from seeing actual examples, even when I learn a new language or I try to understand how a library works, an example. And right now with AI, it's amazing because you can just ask the flanker to, okay, write me a very small example that does this, and this like a very focused thing you want to learn. And then you can not just ask a question to the AI how a library works, but you can actually like let the AI go through the example that just wrote. So you can actually see it working. You can use that example to evolve the complexity and learn an increasing complexity by using the example as a way to learn, not just as asking questions to the LLM, but also like to evolve your tiny project as you evolve your knowledge about that specific library or stuff you're learning.
Dillon, let me ask you this. Are you guys using Effect v4 at Cloudflare? Because I feel like my experience has been, and I've heard this from many others as well, because we've put a ton of effort into it, that the agentic coding experience with v4 is far superior to that with v3. And like I don't think it's by accident. We put a ton of effort into the code base itself. So like if you have a copy of the effect code base sitting there, like we put a ton of effort into like the JS docs and things that like the agent can use to learn about how to use each method in the library. But I'm curious, are you guys using v3, v4? What's your opinion on
that? I know Dane has some stuff deployed. For everyone, Dane's the CTO of Cloudflare, who is effect build. He's been building with effect for a while, so I would assume most of that stuff's probably v3, because I think he started building some of that in the fall. Today, what I work on artifacts is not There's no effect in it. Although I'm getting closer and closer every day to starting to refactor to Effect v4. I have a couple like small like admin apps that's like on the internal network that no one could get to that is Effect v4 and Alchemy v2. I mean, I think I didn't admittedly write a lot of Effect with agents because like the bulk of the work that I did at Vercel where we were using Effect, like it was still like, you know, Sonnet 3, Opus 3, and like it was fine, but like not super agentic across large code bases. Like we did get to a point where we could be like, and I think this is credit to Effect, where like we could say like, I want a new admin tool for managing, I don't know, toggling a customer's auto renewal on their domain, right? And it would be able to wire up across like 2 different services, like all the RPC stuff, hit the database, wire it up into the admin service. And I think that's because we had a bunch of examples of like good Effect code doing those same patterns. And like we were at the time, we were one of the only teams I think that were having that kind of speed improvement with AI. I went on a rant this morning about just like, it's like what I said earlier. I do think that it's better at writing V3 or V4 than V3, but like I'm still just so, some days I just get so burnt out because like even having the copies of, and this isn't exclusive to Effect, just in general, it's just like so much work to get it to do the right thing sometimes. And the most annoying part of that is that like, even despite that, I am more productive. So it's like, yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah. I think that one thing that changed, and it always was like a very hard decision to make, because it is a technical decision, like to choose the correct tool to do something. And I think that AI is like putting that boundary of choosing whatever the tool is, you writing the code or asking the AI to do that. It's now a higher boundary. It makes more like difficult to decide whenever you are going into a task that the AI may understand immediately and get done immediately, or the AI may go into a route that's not the route you want, and it will take like a tangent and do whatever it wants. Yeah, it has become like an issue as well. It always has been a problem with any tool, because choosing the right tool for the right task is really, really hard. And now AI is like deciding if we are the right tool or the model is the right tool.
It's some people may find me like insane for this, but like on Sunday night, I told you I have this project I'm working on for my wife for like our house. It's like a little app for our home, and I like made the firm decision that I'm writing absolutely none of it with AI, because like I genuinely miss like
Yeah.
right like hands-on keyboard like writing code. So like I took like just 2 hours on Sunday night after the kids were in bed, and I like just like wrote some code, and I had like so much fun, as opposed to like you know, I don't know, like I've been reading more about this on I feel like on social media recently, but the like there's like something missing from the agentic coding experience. Like as an engineer, like
Yeah.
I feel like it takes some it yes, you're more productive, so there's like a huge incentive to use the tooling, but it takes something away from you. I don't it's not extremely clear to me what it is, but cuz like you're still making decisions and whatever, but it's like I don't know.
I
I
talked
was
about
having
that
so
on my
much
stream
fun.
this morning. Like this exact thing. It's like it's changed the job of software engineering. Like for the past 13 years doing this professionally, like showing up to work every day didn't feel like a job and doing work. And now at least 50% of the time it feels like, oh, this is just like a job and work. And like it has taken like that joy, the like I rarely ever get into like some sort of flow state.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and like that's okay. I mean, it's going to be this way. And like, I feel very lucky to have had 13 years of my passion and joy being
it
my
has
job.
been fun.
And like, that
Yeah.
sounds very pessimistic. I don't know if it will ever be back to the way it was, like so immersive. But I also don't think we're going to be stuck in this like valley of uncertainty and like grayness. I think like best practices and tooling will get to a place where like more of the industry has a consistent workflow and can get more reliable results consistently out of it. But right now it does generally just feel like, okay, back to the, all right, I'm going to clock in.
Yeah.
I'm going to trade my time and labor for money and produce some stuff. And then like, it's still fun and I love what I work on, but it's definitely not the same.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you make a good point with like the flow state piece of it, because like I really got into this project that I was working on like on Sunday night, and like it was just so fun. Like I was exploring like Cloudflare, because I personally haven't used Cloudflare for like a proper like full application. Like I haven't used the developer platform really yet since like ever. So like I was having a good time. The last time I tried to use it was a long time ago, and it was not in the state that it is now. Now it's a much more pleasant experience, and it's a lot more fun to use. So I was really having fun, like exploring the primitives, figuring out, okay, what pieces am I going to use, like figuring out the services I was going to build in my effect app for all of this. And like, yeah, it's like totally gone when I go to work. I'm just like, okay, my incentive is to be as fast as humanly possible and produce the best code I can. So, you know, the incentives are totally different now. You know, how many coding agents can you have running at one time? How much of like your, you know, how many problems can I solve simultaneously? It's so strange. It's such a strange like time to be a developer. I feel bad for the juniors that are like coming into the industry now, and like this is what they have to. They don't get the I don't know. It's a totally different world of being an engineer.
What Matthias in the chat said, something is missing, and that's the excitement of discovering a solution. And that's true. You know, when you have like an agent doing the exploration, you are missing the excitement of maybe investigating, trying out things and whatever, and then you actually find the solution you want that's correct for your trade-offs. And right now, instead, you can just prompt an agent, and the agent will, like in a couple of seconds, say, "Okay, this is our possible solution. These are the trade-offs." You know, we are missing that research and explore phase, because now we have someone else doing it, and I think it's that leans more into the fact that the engineering job as a coder we had before nowadays is maybe. I would not say go away, because I don't want that to go away, but we are basically moving to being more like reviewers, because we watch the code and we review it. We are project manager because we decide what's next. We decide which are the project trade-offs. So I think that we are also, like right now, as Dillon mentioned, in a timing where the tooling is not mature, because the tooling is still focused on coders. And now we are, for the most part, reviewers and also project managers. So again, we need like next era of tooling to move in that direction, to help us coordinate more agents, to help us have agents be more on guardrails and do stuff. I think that's something that's missing, that will probably change the next era of engineers. Let's call it like that.
I think part of it too is like Sunil talks about this a lot. It's like the level that we work at now is more like at the systems architecture, abstraction, design layer, and like those problems are like bigger, harder problems, and it's like they're still fun to solve, and like I'm still solving those in like kind of the same ways I did before, but that's like now the majority of my problem solving, rather than like, okay, I need to think about this big subsystem that I need to build. I need to think about how I'm storing the data, indexing it, how I'm going to retrieve it, how I'm going to lay out my services and layers, HTTP. And
less
then like
decomposition. You're
and like
operating it up here and not like this way.
well, like I think where I'm going with this is like you would think about and plan that kind of work, and then you would go implement it, and then like that's where you get into the flow state, and then like along the way, it's a bunch of like tinier problem solving. Like, do I want to use a subscription ref here? What is the right effect API? How do I want this thing to talk to that thing? Like you got this break from like the macro picture, and now it's just like that's all the work is, and that feels a lot more tiring. And then also like it's just like I still review every line that, especially for like a production service like artifacts, right? Like, I mean, one-off tools, scripts, whatever, like I'm not reading the code, but like for production services, I'm reading every single line that the agent writes and reviewing it super closely. And it's just like, no matter what I do, and like the way I'm working right now is I'm basically having the clanker prototype out like the types, the call stack, like I've tweeted about this, and like it gets a lot closer to what I want during implementation, but it's still like far from perfect. And I still every single time have to go correct it. And a lot of times it's like the same kind of things. And no matter what I do, like it's the same. I just feel like it's an insanity loop where like no amount of linting or agents MDs or reference repos at the minute makes any difference to these things just making the same kind of mistakes over and over. And it's just like, once it gets to the point where like I don't have to correct the same things over and over and over and over and over again, like I think things will feel a little bit better. Like that's the part that's exhausting right now. It's like, oh, I know I'm going to go in here and it's going to be doing some stupid, overly defensive thing, or it's going to be passing optional parameters all over the place.
There's
or
12
just
million
like,
helper functions. Like,
yeah. And it's just
the
like
same
that
type is defined 20 times.
Yeah.
In 20
And like, no
different
matter
cases.
what, like I try very hard to scope work down small and point it at references and prepare really good context up front. And that definitely helps. Like, do not get me wrong. Like you should be doing this, like, but it's also exhausting.
Yeah.
there was a comment in my Twitch chat. First, I'll read the second one, then the first one. I think the idea that more agents at once is not a good thing. I want to be clear. I agree with that. I don't think running multiple agents. I don't think running multiple agents in parallel is necessarily a good thing. But I think the incentives in the engineering space have changed to almost incentivize that, because in the industry now, timelines that used to be 2, 3, 4 weeks have shrunk to virtually nothing. Like if you have a problem and you're not shipping a solution in a few days, and even a few days might be like too long for some orgs, right? Like if you're a startup and you're taking days to do things, someone's getting pissed, right? Like
it's like I want to go in and do it myself.
Right. Like so like the incentives have totally changed to like how engineering actually happens, like how we actually like produce software as engineers, in my opinion. So I agree that like running many agents in parallel and context switching over and over and over again, I don't think that's a good thing. I think that's the same problem we had before coding agents even existed. Context switching as an engineer was never a good thing. I still think it's never a good thing. Because you, like Dillon said, you don't get into a flow state where you like are solving problems and like you're really hyper focused and whatever. I just agree with Dillon that it's extremely difficult to enter a flow state with an agent. Like I don't think I've ever sat here looking at my open code session and like actually fully gotten into the same types of like flow state that I could get into when I'm just like programming myself. I like don't really think that.
I think to get there, some of the stuff we've already talked about has to improve. And I also think the speed of inference, I think that's a big thing. Like I've used some very, very fast models. And like when you're doing that, like it feels, especially ones that are steerable, like Opus 4.6 fast, not that I use that on a daily basis because it's very expensive, but like I've felt up until this point, Opus 4.6, at least for me, the way I work, has been the most steerable, and I can get the most consistent results with it, right? And when it's on fast, it's like, okay, boom, 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 boom. And I'm keeping work tiny enough that like, it's like I can almost feel, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like I can see a world where it works again.
It's happening.
But like,
yeah,
still like even keeping work tiny and reviewing every line, like I still, like I'm kind of in like this workflow where I'll go a couple days and I'll ship all these features and all this code, and I still reviewed it, and it's like relatively, like let's call it like 85% the quality of what I would do on my own, which is frankly good enough for most instances. And then I spend a day or two what I call gardening. I go through and I clean up. I just spend 2 days reorganizing files, cleaning up extractions, getting rid of the bloat. And it's like you almost just need like that, those janitor days, gardener days to built in. And actually those days are the most fun days I have. It's like, because it like gets 85% of the way there, and then it's just like, okay, I got a little bit of cleanup, and I can, I don't know.
There was a tweet that Dax. There was a tweet that Dax had. I have to scroll through 8 million tweets because Dax tweets so much. But there was a tweet that he had put out a while back. I have no idea if I'm even going to find it in this like endless list of his tweets, where he kind of described what you were describing, Dillon, where like agentic coding feels more like now where the initial version is like kind of like a grainy image. I've talked about this on office hours before, but like the tweet was basically like started off with like a grainy image and like slowly progresses from a grainy image to like a more clear image. And like his take was that software engineering, like with agentic coding involved and everything, feels a lot more like that now. We're like, oh, here it is. God, that took a really long time to find. I think I scrolled through like 100 tweets, maybe more. Here, this one. Where, let me zoom in a little bit. Finally found the right metaphor for this shift in how I use open code. I used to treat it like 3D printing where you build it layer by layer and commit each piece as you go, but now it feels more like a progressive rendering where you start with like a really blurry version and then you keep making full passes over it to sharpen the shape. And this felt a lot like what you were saying, where you build something and, you know, maybe you know, for production services at Cloudflare, you start here at like the slightly less like grainy image. But like, you know, the whole point is that over time you're trying to improve the picture, right? You're doing the gardening to try to get to that more like clear image. So yeah.
It is a shift in the way you work, because basically now, whereas maybe before you did something and then you consider that done and that's finished, now you are more like incentivized into navigating your code base, see how things can be improved, etc. And for example, I enjoy this style of using the AIs. Basically, let the AI do a first slop implementation, then understand which are the trade-offs, which are the things that may be interesting, that may be changed in the paradigm, and then try to polish that down in the following up days. Because I think that that's a new way that before you couldn't do that. Before, you know, you either do it or not. Now you can easily say, okay, I am fine with whatever you came up with. Let's assess that this works, that this is what we want, and then once we have assessed that, then we can polish it and maybe improve it.
So like when you're doing that, are you having it like, let's say you're not completely happy, like let's say it's like 65, 70% of the way there of like what you would normally write, like are you then going through and having it refactor the current implementation? Or are you having it just start over with new guidance?
It depends on the task, because sometimes what I do is basically keep like that branch and then start up a new agent with the new branch from the beginning and say, okay, this is the changes that the other agent did. We want to achieve the same things, but I think there is room for improvement here, 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 and here. and then it basically tries to take the same idea that was on the other branch and then re-implement it, which is good because the first agent basically do the implementation, the testing, the exploration, and then the second one is more focused on actually bringing in the changes and investigating for room for improvements. But again, that depends on the tasks, because sometimes they are tiny, and I can just maybe have what I do sometimes is like take advantage of the Git history to like say the agent, this is where I started, do whatever you want, okay, and now start a new agent, pick the diff that has happened since the start, and fix only those part of the code because they are the only one that's interesting. But again, that changes a lot on how big is the task, which are the issues that come out after the first slop implementation, I would say.
I want to get your guys' take on one of the comments I had in my Twitch chat, which was, I don't know, for the comment was, for the most part, I've not built anything really novel in a long time. The enjoyment for me is more of getting to the end product. So I guess the takeaway here is like that instead of getting the enjoyment out of like writing the code and like progressively building something up, that AI has like enabled us to get to the end product a lot faster, I guess. What is your guys' take on this like opinion?
I think that
I can give you my own opinion, but
like we would have never shipped artifacts in like a couple weeks in a before world, and like that won us a big customer and trust from a big customer and got us to ship and get good publicity and people trying it in our beta. And like there is merit to getting something out there and shipping it. Flip side, I feel like I haven't been excited about anything that any company or tech has put out in like the past 6 months. Like it just feels like all the same, and it's just like stuff that is either not useful to me at all or only useful to AI agents, and so much of it's just the same shit. And like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think obviously from a business perspective and like seeing your company succeed perspective, of course, getting to the end product faster or the app that you're building faster is satisfying. But I don't think any of us got into software engineering to get to the end state, like to only be focusing on like I don't my opinion is that like I didn't get into software engineering because I was solely interested in getting to the end product. I got into software engineering because I liked solving problems. Like it wasn't my first career, and like, you know, I thought that like I moved careers because I enjoyed the problem solving in this industry a lot more. So yeah, I don't know. I can see the argument. Don't get me wrong. I can see the argument, and I don't want to take anything away from it. But for me, like if we take the business focused mindset and like the like value of shipping, like to the value of getting to an end product faster out of the equation, like if you're talking from the perspective of like an individual engineer, I don't know. I it's like I said before, there's something that agentic coding has taken away from me that is, I don't know, it makes it much less satisfying. And like when I am manually writing code, like I feel like I'm doing something wrong. Like I literally feel like you know, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be letting my agent rip. I should be like there's it's the weirdest
I feel
thing.
that too. It's like the temptation is always there when you're manually writing code, and like it's not even just that like, oh, I could be doing this faster and productive. For me, it's also like my, I guess, inner engineer and problem solver is like, I should be doing this with an agent because this is more practice for me to figure out how to get to the point I want to be at, because I still don't feel like I'm there. Like I'm desperately digging to get to a way of working that I enjoy. And like anytime I write code by hand, it's like I
Basically-
should just be working on that.
Yeah. Basically, the issue is that we are engineers and we are realizing that ourselves are the bottleneck in the process of building something. And then we realize that either like we lose half of the joy of the journey and be more productive, because I think that sure, agents are taking half of the joy because, as we mentioned, where they are taking away, they are making easier the research and exploration part. But yeah, the engineer that is in ourselves is screaming whenever we see that we could do something faster with like wasting less time on that, and that's something like screams at us saying we could do that better.
Since we're nearing the top of the hour and we're probably going to wrap up office hours soon, I want to like get Dillon's take on something not AI related. Because I can't tell if I'm being baited in my Twitch chat or not. I don't think I am. I think these are genuine questions. So that's why I want to like we could answer these all day, but I think it would be good to come from Dillon. But there's someone in my chat who's asking, their name is Stop Using AI.
I linked I don't know if it showed up, but I linked my talk from React Miami about the problems with try catch. But
there's I don't know if I see your link in my Twitch chat, but there is, so the question is basically for the audience, what is the value in knowing if something can throw or not? Isn't that the responsibility of try catch? Respectfully, I don't see anything in effect that isn't available in base TypeScript. It even feels like an anti-pattern. And for context, I think these are genuine questions, so I don't think I'm being baited. This individual says that they have 20 years in the dev realm, which is not a short amount of time. That's a pretty long time to be a developer, be an engineer. So I think these are like respectful, genuine questions.
So I would turn around and be like, how in TypeScript specifically, we're keeping this conversation scope to TypeScript. In TypeScript, plain TypeScript, how do you know if a function throws? And the answer is you don't. You can't. The only way you can know that is if you go look at the implementation and go look at any function that calls and its implementation and follow that the entire way to the bottom of the call stack. That is the only way you can reliably and 100% know if a function can error and throw. And then on top of that, like maybe implementations change of functions down below, and over time different errors can happen. And do you trust library authors to keep backwards compatibility on errors? Are they even using custom errors? Maybe they start using custom errors or revert. There is no way to know. And unfortunately, the culture around TypeScript and try catch is not very good. We have a tendency to focus on happy paths, maybe throw a try catch in and do some error logging, log it to telemetry or something. But most large TypeScript code bases that I've worked in have horrible hygiene around error handling because of the problems of the type system in the language. You want errors as values, whether that's with a result type or using effects, or even just returning a discriminated union where you have a tag and it's okay or error value, right? Because that encodes the way functions can actually fail. You and your AI, I know your name is Stop Using AI, but for the rest of the world, it gives meaningful information to the consumers of the code, whether that's static analysis tooling, a human, or an AI agent, to know how a function will actually operate and the ways it can fail. And then consumers can make way more educated they can make more educated decisions about how they use that function, that code, that SDK client, and how the different ways something could fail. Like maybe you have something reading a file from disk, right? And like that can fail in a dozen different ways. And maybe some ways it is a catastrophic error that needs like a 500 up to an API endpoint. Or maybe otherwise you can retry. Maybe you need to retry with exponential back off on a different error. Maybe you can just log a warning. Like that's why you want errors as values. And that's my take.
I would just add that even if you are not interested in having, if you don't like feel the need for having error as values, I would say that libraries like Effect still brings on the table for you a lot of things that doing manually in plain TypeScript are a mess. Because, for example, try to just implement an HTTP endpoint that calls maybe other 3 APIs that they need to be called altogether. If one fails, then you need to cancel the other ones, and then you want to have telemetry to investigate why one fails and the other succeeds. And then those are things that they are not trivial to implement. They seem so, but the amount of like dance you need to do around those ones is really, really high. And Effect basically helps you doing that, because I would say, I would not say that's an architecture issue. That's something that the promise primitive is lacking of, because again, the promise represents something that's already running, so it has no built-in cancellation. It is not lazy, so you cannot wrap something that you describe a computation. It's already running. You cannot add behaviors around the computation, such as for example retries or whatever. So even if you don't like lean into the errors values, I think that still using something that emulates what Effect does has its values.
And like to your point, unioning the return type and error, if every TypeScript developer did that, the world would be way better off. Like I would, if I could get every developer in the world that's writing TypeScript to just union the error type along with the return type rather than throwing an unknown value, because the type system coerces any thrown error to unknown. What you're saying here, like return type, union, error, I would take that over 20% of the population using Effect. Like it would make better software, it would make more reliable software, but it's just not the culture. Like I've talked about this in the, if you go look at my React Miami talk from last year, I talked about errors to values, and like to write very good TypeScript and actually handle errors properly, it takes a ton of discipline, and discipline doesn't scale at the organizational level in big engineering orgs. But I also have to jump for a meeting. Thanks for having me
Dillon,
on. It was
thanks for coming
good
on.
catching up with you guys. I miss you guys.
I miss you too, bud.
We miss you
Take
too.
care.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Peace.
I think there were some more questions about that I do want to address. These are good questions. I mean, listen, I know that there are people in both chats who are like, what do you mean? Why don't you understand why, typed errors is a good thing, errors as values is a good thing. But these are like legitimate questions that I think warrant like answers and like warrant discussion, and like they go back to, I mean, if you guys recall, Effect 2 years ago, this was like the base conversation that people were having. There were very, very few Effect advocates 2-3 years ago. And most of the discourse, the first time Effect ever went viral on tech Twitter, 95% of the discourse was negative. You know what I mean? So like, I think that these conversations like are warranted, and I don't think we should be dismissive of folks who come in and question the value of what we're trying to do. And again, like if we're not able to convince some folks about Effect, that's fine. Like, people have been writing normal TypeScript for a really long time, and I don't think Effect will ever take over the world. Like there's people who are not going to enjoy writing it, and that's fine. But again, I think the questions warrant discussion and answers. So I'm going to scroll up a bit in my Twitch chat and address the additional questions. So when we were talking about errors as values, and Dillon was discussing how in TypeScript, there's absolutely no way at the type level to know if a function throws that there was a question posed by the same person who said that's the job of tests. And I do agree that you should be testing what the behavior of your function in its entirety. But then the follow-up was that it wasn't true what Dillon was saying, that there's not any way to know, like, at the type level if a function throws. It's not true. In TypeScript, there is literally no way to encode in the type system the behavior of throwing an error. There's none. And so there was another comment that said you could return like a union of value or error, which is true. You could. That's not a very good experience for the developer who is receiving that. You could take a Go style approach and return a tuple. But again, like I would argue, there's quite a few people, even who program in Go every day, who don't enjoy the error handling experience in Go. If error, then blah, 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 if error, then blah, 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 if error, then blah, blah, blah. It's not a really great experience. And errors don't it's not compositional, right? So like it's very imperative. It's not compositional. And to address the question about, value or error in TypeScript, that's fine. But if you have a custom error, if you have like 3 different custom errors, like rate limit error, extends error, and this error extends error, and this error extends error, at the end of the day, it's all going to collapse down to error in the type system. So like having errors as values, like there's quite a bit of content. If you take effect out of the equation, right? If you take effect out of the equation entirely and all the other benefits of effect out of the equation, the conversation about like errors as values, I think has tons of advocates for it. It goes like the Rust ecosystem has errors as values. Even the Go ecosystem technically has the ability to encode errors as values. So I think there's kind of like 2 things here. Like, what's the value of effect as like a library for programming? And I think it goes way beyond error handling. Like we encode errors in the type system because we believe that's the correct way to represent domain-specific errors, and gives you and your team and other consumers of your project a lot more information about how your effect programs behave. Like, how do they succeed? Everything about your effect program is now encoded in the type system. The whole world of your program is represented in a type. You know what it can succeed with, you know what it can fail with, you know what requirements it has. So that's like one side of the equation, the effect side. And then there's like the errors as values side, which I think is a much larger discussion and has a lot more people talking about it. So I think I don't want to get into like the whole errors as values debate, because I think there's people on both sides and there always will be. I think, for most people who are skeptical on effect, it's funny. I think Mattia and myself and Mike and the whole effect team, Tim, we've all, Julio, we've all seen it play out 1,000 times on social media, where someone is very skeptical about effect, says they'll never use it. They don't understand why it exists. And then they like try it out for a project, and maybe for a little while it's bumpy and it's not the experience leaves a little bit to be desired. But as they get more comfortable writing effect, eventually, like when you go back to writing standard TypeScript, you realize all of the things that like it doesn't give you, and you're just like, God, I really wish I could just write this in effect. Right? It's not for everyone, to be clear. But I think that there is something to be said just for giving it a shot.
It's a tool, and as any tool, there is no universal tool that works for everything. You won't probably use React just to change the background color of a button when clicked, but again, it's a tool, and you understand the value of the tool only after you have used it, only after you understand the trade-offs that the tool provides. I think that's perfectly fine. That's why initially we said I think that the best way to lean on people on effects is taking like a real world problem you have in your application and try to solve that with effect and see how it goes, because that's the only way you can understand the value of effect and find out why it works.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, and unlike Matthias said, it's not for everybody. But I think there's value in effect, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't be working on it. I think a lot of other people also think there's value in effect. A lot of people who also equivalently have 20 or 30 years of experience in the development space, who have seen TypeScript from its infancy, from when it was first released to the world, right? And have seen it grow over time. Have experienced like all the trials and tribulations of writing big projects in TypeScript, whatever. Dillon's a great example because he's programmed in many different languages. He's just sort of landed in TypeScript, even though that's not his first love. He loves OCaml. He's a great example of somebody who was initially extremely skeptical on effect. Like, I think Mike blocked him on Twitter at one point. Because they were like having the debate, and Mike, I don't remember what the context was, but we joke about it now because, Dillon's probably one of the biggest effect advocates that exists. Every company he goes to eventually starts using effect for everything. So I think it's like one of those things where to really see the value and to understand, you just have to start using it and sort of get over the initial hurdle of like the syntax. And then once you do, for most folks, I would say that we've talked to, it's hard to like go back to the standard way of writing TypeScript. But to get back to the original question that the individual had in my Twitch chat, I think that it's not really an effect question, if I'm being honest. I think the question is really more about the value, or the reason why you would want errors as values. I think, if I'm being honest, I think that's more of what the question is. I don't see any more. I hope we sort of addressed your questions. Stop using AI. I don't know if you're still in the chat, but hopefully.
There was only one which wasn't properly a question, but I want to be more interested in understanding why. There was a question saying that for now they tried Effect v3 and it works for agents, but they had hard time migration to v4, and I would like to learn more about that. Maybe next days or whatever, we can post more about that into the office hours channel, trying to understand what didn't work in your experience, how we can help improve it. Because usually I had, at least for the 3 applications that I have migrated to v4, I had the opposite experience. Agents loved v4, but again, open to see which were the issues you encountered, in order to see if maybe we can discuss next time things that can help the migration.
Yeah, put it in Discord. Join it. If you're not in Discord, definitely join and tell us about the issues you were having with like the agent, because we've done a lot of experiments with effect and agentic coding. So it'd be good to know like what the problems you had were and like what the harness setups, etc. you were using was.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Yeah.
Have you considered rewriting everything in Rust? Indeed, yes. I have considered it, and I have determined that I'm not rewriting everything in Rust. We've talked about it numerous times on the channel, but I think
maybe we could rewrite Rust in effect.
Oh God, that'd be very interesting. Yeah. So I hope I haven't heard anything more from this individual in chat who sparked this conversation, but hopefully we answered the question.
Yeah.
I'm always a fan of having these conversations. I think if you're a good engineer, one of the things I really try to like keep in mind as like as a good engineering practice is to never dismiss folks who have an idea or have a question, no matter how strongly you feel on the subject. So I think that it's a really like part of our profession of like being engineers. Part of our profession, in my opinion, is like successfully being able to have these conversations about why different practices are valuable, because that's how we all improve and that's how like engineering improves. Obviously people are going to have strong opinions, but I think engaging in a proper discourse is always I think it's an enjoyable and like useful exercise, even
That's
if
the
at the end
value.
of the day at the end of the day there's still no consensus. Like just by virtue of like having an educated and like cordial conversation about a topic, you can learn something, in my opinion. Any other questions, things you folks want us to address? Did I break my Twitch chat? Like people just stopped talking.
I think that's because Dillon went away.
Dillon went away and everybody's like, all right.
Okay, right.
The interesting one is gone. We're all out.
Usually that happens with Mike. When Mike comes on stream, everyone is happy.
Everybody gets excited when Mike joins the stream.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Well, if nobody since you guys since you guys clearly know how to build software, could you maybe in another office hours session explain the process you use for implementing a feature in Effect v4, going from an issue to merge? Yeah, we could. I don't know. We could do that in another office hours. I'm not going to be here for the next 2, so maybe Mattia wants to do that with Mike or whoever's going to join. If you guys are going to do them while I'm gone, I think that could be interesting. I think Tim's workflow for library development is really interesting. If you're curious, Tim developed. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mattia.
I think that Tim, for example, would have a lot of value to bring in how to do this workflow, especially for if you are speaking for library-wise features. I think I'm not sure if the question is about library-wise features or like feature intended in any application feature. But yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know either. But for library development specifically, Tim's got a good workflow. He uses a software that he built called LALF, which is basically a tool for using an issue source and converting those issue sources to PRs, and then being able to like comment on the PR and feed that back into the agent. So almost like a loop where he's like very much the human in the middle. And you can have different issue sources, like whether it be GitHub issues or linear issues or whatever. And there's like a background agent that's running and picks up on these issues and will like work on PRs and things like that for them. So he's got kind of a really interesting workflow for that. I just got into the stream. I might have missed it from earlier, but do you have any ETA on when V4 will be released? Well, V4 is currently in beta, so it is available. You can use it. It is available on NPM. There are beta tags coming out all the time. We don't have a timeline on when it will be in RC or when it will be stable. But I think that the churn has been much slower in V4 now. Particularly in the core of V4, like obviously the unstable modules, we talked about this earlier, but the unstable modules are going to have churn. But I think we're much closer to a release candidates now than you might think. I don't. We don't have a timeline. Let me put it that way. How can we as a community contribute to make it easier for you to make progress on V4? Well, that's a great question. I think the hardest thing for us as maintainers, and this is not just in effect, but like for any open source project, but when you get like a massive 2,000 line PR implementing something,
We merge directly. That's what you were about to say, right?
merge.
No.
It is especially when the PR description is so clearly AI generated and the code is so clearly AI generated, it completely disincentivizes an open source software maintainer from reviewing that PR at all. So it may just sit open forever. I much prefer like very targeted, very clear, like human written descriptions of what was changed, because obviously the code might have been AI assisted, but like whatever you can do to keep the maintainers in mind when you're opening PRs is what can help us move features and things like that along faster, because I'm not reading all that. Like it's like that meme. Wait, I'll pull it up. Hang on.
Yeah.
This
Also,
when I see when I see when I see when I see one of these giant PRs open, this is exactly what I think. Wait, where is it? This thing here. Images. This. How do I make it bigger? Images. Yeah, this. When I get one of these giant AI generated PRs with a giant AI generated description, this is exactly how I feel, and it's never getting reviewed. I can tell you that much.
I'm happy for you, or sorry that happened.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, just to add a quick follow-up to that. Also, I think that especially when we are speaking to PRs to effect, I would say that probably I would prefer like 10 tiny PRs over one huge PR. So maybe
Yes.
even like effect is like so modular that I would prefer to like watch into like 10 tiny PRs that maybe add a method, fix another one, prepare the ground for something else, because maybe also that I think is more like it helps a lot, like to maybe change idea in the middle, because maybe the first 2 or 3 PRs are correct and maybe we can like merge them straight away, but the fourth one changes completely like the direction, or is it not the direction we want. If that was a single PR, that would lean into a longer discussion that maybe will never end. And instead, if there are many like small PRs, I think that it's kind of
GitHub
easier.
supports. Do they support stacked PRs now, Mattia?
I think so. I think
you can do stacked PRs. So like, I'm not sure. I haven't done it myself. But if I'm reviewing a massive new feature, like I kind of to Mattia's point, if stacked PRs are a thing in GitHub, I almost feel like that would be easier for us. Very clear individual PRs that stack together to implement a feature would be much easier for us to review.
It is currently in beta. So
beta.
Yeah.
Too bad, so sad. So then maybe like, clear like commits. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a great answer on like these massive AI generated features that come in, because it's like I said, I ain't reading all that. It's like, especially if the PR description is totally AI generated. Like if you're not reading it, I'm not reading it. Like it's not my job. So if I can tell that somebody took the time to like really make it easy for me to review something to get it into the library, that's a totally different story. Like, but if somebody just like popped their slop into a PR with a giant AI generated description, I'm sorry, I'm just not reading that.
Because the problem is that there may be value in that, but the thing is that maybe like 2 concepts or 2 lines of value of the PR get lost in like the other 1,000 ones. And so that's why I think like using smaller PRs helps.
I'm not like, yes, we're employed by Effectful, and part of Effectful is to maintain effect. That is like what are part of our part of what we do at the company, but it's not our value proposition as a company. We don't have a product out yet. We're working on it, but like it takes a long time to review those big PRs. It's like we're trying to keep Effect as like a very well-maintained, good solutions, good abstractions, etc. So like we put a lot of effort into reviewing these PRs. So anyway, I don't want to like get too whatever about this, but whatever you can do to help the maintainers, and this goes for any open source library. If you're opening a PR, especially in this new age of agentic development and whatever you can do to make it easy for the maintainer to review that PR is gonna make it more likely that your feature or issue or whatever is actually addressed. The individual who asked us about our software development process with agentic coding also said like to focus on like tests, specs, project management, review, etc. We all have a different flow. I think like I said, Tim's process is interesting. Uses the agent, pulls issues into the agent from an issue source, and then lets the agent implement a solution, opens a PR, comments on the PR, that gets fed back into the agent. I think that his workflow for library development is really interesting. He uses like issues and things like that as the project management tool. I think we all use issues for project management, but we also like speak internally as the maintainers to also figure that out. There is a user in my chat in Twitch called FoldKit. I don't know if that's Devin. If it is, hello. But regarding AI assisted programming DX, my take is that the waiting is the real issue. I feel like the experience would almost be the same, if not better, if it was 5 years ago in terms of flow state, if the predictions were near instant. Yeah, this is kind of what Dillon was saying, that it is Devin. Hello.
Yeah, hello.
I don't know if you were in the chat earlier when Dillon was here, but he basically said the same thing. If the like faster inference, it helps. It's still not a full solution, but like faster inference does help.
It's kind of like the same of that meme that was out a few years ago about Internet Explorer. Like there was like people that were representing the various browser, and then someone was posing a question, and then after a while that person representing Internet Explorer replied like 10 minutes later, and we are basically in the same thing with agents right now, because we are probably thinking moving a lot faster than agent inference is, and that's why we kind of feel frustrated, because we are not in the point where we pinpoint fast enough with the agent, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, let me see if there are any other questions in the chat. Does Effect work well with Next.js? Yes, it does.
Yes.
You can build APIs and things like that in Next, and it works well. If you want to use it on the front end, you can use Effect Atom in Next.js. So yes, it does work well. I don't think we missed any other questions. Well, thank you all very much for the great discussion and for feeding us with good questions. Thank you, Dillon, if you're still listening or whatever, for joining us for a bit to give your take on bringing Effect into small teams and or any team really, and figuring out how to make Effect successful even at like larger companies that are established. And yeah, thank all of you folks for hanging out for the full hour and a half, joining us, and we will see you next time. I won't see you folks for like 2 weeks, but you'll see Mattia hopefully.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you again, everyone.
Cheers, folks. Until next time.
Cheers. Have a nice day.